It is a beautiful Wednesday morning. Good morning and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast. I'm Veronica Dan Boy. I'm not here alone. I have Kemi Fola Adiemo. It's an all-women affair this morning.
Absolutely. Super Sam, not here.
Not here
Good
today.
morning.
Yeah, good morning. All right, so many developing stories across the country, around the world. But the one that is concerning for me this morning that I'd like for us to speak on is the matter of food crisis. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has come out to say that about 25 million Nigerians are being threatened with regards to food crisis from next year, between June and I think August, if nothing is done as quickly as possible. He said already, as we speak, about 17 million Nigerians are already facing food crisis, and then another 25 will be joining them as next year. And some of the states that are vulnerable to this food crisis are in Benue, Yobe, and I think Adamawa or so. And then he talked about those, especially IDPs, those in the IDPs, and some parts of, in some states and within the Federal Capital Territory, are the ones that will be facing this matter of food crisis. Although he's looking at intervention, but that government has to do something.
Absolutely, government has to do the needful. But then this is a trend that we've been following all through the year. There's been, one factor after factor, especially the deadly floods that occurred, a few months back. Many grounds are still yet to be dry. Many farmlands, were lost with, essential food and other commodities also affected, and coupled with the issue of insecurity, and the like. Of course, insecurity, like we said yesterday, means different things to different people. For some people, it's banditry. For some people, it's kidnappers. For some people, it's the terrorists themselves. It's Boko Haram terrorists and IDPs, as you mentioned. This is a serious problem. Of course, these figures are being debated upon. The federal government, the Minister of Agriculture, is saying no, that's not the case. But, the voices on the other side are also saying otherwise, that government really needs to do more. CBN needs to do more to help farmers. Farmers really need to be helped at this time.
You recall the Anchor Borrower scheme when the government said that we are going to focus on agriculture, and we even shut our borders at some point because we wanted to see how we can, consume our own, what we produce and all of that. Yet it was not enough, even as at that time before the floods. Now come look at all of the issues around insecurity, like you rightly mentioned, the flooding, and when we talk about the Anchor Borrower scheme that the government came up with, when we speak with most of the farmers at the time, they tell you that this monies were not coming to them. It wasn't getting to them, the real farmers. It wasn't getting to them. So accessing credit was even a challenge for them at some point. Collateral, all of those demands being made by the banks, and that they cannot meet up. Some of these farmers cannot meet up with the demands being made by the banks. These are the issues we believe that government needs to begin to look into. Yes, climate plays a major role.
True.
What are we doing at addressing that? We have always spoken about having holding dams. We know that at a certain period we have floods. But what have we done to address, this matter of flooding? Building holding dams such that when we can use them for irrigation at the right time. What are we doing to address that? State governments, local government, all levels of government have a role, a major role to play as we speak.
Especially if we add a bit more context now to our discussion, the fact that when you look at agriculture, people have said, statistics have proven that more women, are the people who farm. If you go to the farmlands, we have more women, which also goes to say that we have more people, more families, more dependents being at risk of famine, because so many people looking up to the women in many households now. The women are the breadwinners, and so you can imagine how enormous this challenge is on our hands. You're right. The issue of access to funds, when you look at how this is so much at risk for the women, or how women are so much at risk, they don't have access to these funds. Collateral is an issue. As much as they are doing, these are the women, or these are the individuals who still don't get to enjoy property rights in many states. You know, there are still cultural issues that are working against the women. Of course, added with this issue of hunger looming for millions of many families.
I agree with you. And there's also the aspect of soaring prices with regards to produce, seedlings, and all of those. You want to get seedlings for your farm. We have soaring prices with regards to that. So it's still fertilizers and all that is necessary.
Before you now bring it down to markets now, the commodities.
Then we do not have storage.
Fuel is also
we do not have
issue,
storage,
right?
And we do not have the fuel. It's just a complex situation as we speak, and it has to be addressed. You know, we have to look at it in context, like you rightly pointed out, and address it as it stands. But basically, every level of government has a role to play at addressing this matter as we speak in Kaduna State, where barely 24 hours after the resumption of train operations on the Kaduna-Abuja route, victims of the March the 20th attack are demanding compensation from the federal government to rebuild their lives. We have details in this report.
The victims who spoke to journalists in Kaduna lament that most of them lost their means of livelihood in captivity. They accused the federal government of not fulfilling the promises made to them shortly after meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari upon their release in October. One of the victims, Miriam Idris, said most of them are already suffering from depression and psychological disorders that required urgent medical attention. Miriam's comment was not different from that of Bala Muhammad, who said nobody gave them a single kobo, even when some of them are having health challenges.
I'm expecting much more from them, let's be sincere, because as a citizen which these incidents occurred to, I'm expecting them to at least come to our aid and think, what is happening with you guys? How are you coping with life? Okay, let's help you. Those people who lose their jobs, okay, come, let's sit down. Both of you that have problems with your business, okay, come, let's assist you so that at least you won't fall into depression or something.
Our demand is the federal government to come into our rescue, because the limit of the trauma we are facing now is too over, because of we don't have a capital to go to hospital to take care of our family. And then even now I'm renting in my house. On the first day that I came back home, the owner of the land come and meet me.
Their demand is coming nearly 2 months after the last batch of the 63 kidnapped victims of the March 28 train attack in Kaduna were released.
Governor Samuel Ortom has assured the people of Benue South Senatorial District that the continuity of the People's Democratic Party administration in the state will further work to improve conditions in the state. The governor spoke at the flag-off of the PDP senatorial campaigns in Benue South, just as Senator Abba Moro dismissed comments credited to him on the PDP crisis at the national level. Mayowa Okunwato reports.
As well as the immediate past.
This is the flag-off of the Benue South senatorial campaign at Oju, which witnessed the presentation of the People's Democratic Party flag to candidates of the party for various political positions by the acting chairman of the party. This is significant as it allows the people of Oju to identify their representatives as the 2023 senatorial polls. Governor Samuel Ortom applauded the performance of Senator Abba Moro in the deliverance of dividends of democracy to his constituents. He emphasized that the political space in Benue is dominated by the PDP and that the party will continue to maintain the status quo.
I've always said, 2023, it is the interest of the people that will determine how people will also vote. Here in Benue State, I can assure you that PDP is on top of the game. And all stakeholders are working together. We are not divided.
Senator Abba Moro expressed optimism that the PDP would remain the party to beat in spite of the differences within it at the national level.
Whatever the skirmishes and the rest of them that we assume at the national level, every politics is local. And for Benue State, we will take a decision that will be beneficial to Benue State.
Senator Gabriel Suswam and the PDP deputy governorship candidate, John Mbede, described Senator Abamoro as the grassroots politician whose impact transcends the nation.
Abamoro, our former dad, and as a senator, is a candidate. Whatever you want, when he brings a nation, I support him. Whatever he brings, when our governor comes in, the governor will support him. Your Excellency, I want to categorically tell you that we have presented and ready to support our candidate, Senator Dr. Patrick Abamoro.
They maintained that the flag-off of the Benue South senatorial campaign in Oju is in recognition of the position of the Igede people in the political cycle. Mayowa Okwato, CVC News, Oju.
The presidential candidate of Labour Party says Nigeria will be a net exporter of palm oil for economic prosperity. Addressing thousands of his supporters at the party's presidential rally in Owerri, the Imo State capital, Obi said the state has an arable land for agricultural development. TVC's Prince Oba reports.
Labour Party presidential campaign train moved to Imo State. The crowd of supporters were on the ground to receive Mr. Peter Obi, his vice presidential candidate, and other party stalwarts. For Peter Obi, his presidency will unlock Nigeria's great potentials, which have not been harnessed by successive administrations.
Imo State of potential. Today, the greatest Malaysia exports palm oil. The value of the export from palm oil is about the same value we get from crude oil. Imo State can export palm oil. Madam Palm. Imo State can export palm oil. Imo State can export cassava. I say we will go back to agriculture. Right now in northern Nigeria, there is nobody's name they are calling like Peter Obi. There is nobody that they are scared of because of the truth is going to bring like Peter Obi. We mean business. Nigeria will move from consumption to production.
We have 93,000 pooling units in the north, from Kwara, Benue, up to the north. Those 93,000 pooling units are going to be mined by organic supporters who love Obi genuinely.
These Labour Party supporters believe the emergence of Peter Obi will change the country's narrative in the Committee of Nations.
Make this country become viable again. Make us proud.
He is a man to behold. He is not just an ordinary being. He is a spirit that has come in human form to work and liberate Nigeria from the shackles of hunger.
With the new Nigerian mantra, the emergence of Mr. Peter Obi as presidential candidate, the party has continued to gain traction, especially among the youth. Prince Oba, TVC News, Owerri.
And outside Nigeria, Indonesia's parliament has approved a new criminal code that bans anyone in the country from having extramarital sex and restricts political freedoms. Sex outside marriage will carry a jail term of up to a year under the new law, which takes effect in 3 years. The raft of changes that came after a rise in religious conservatism in the Muslim-majority country. Critics see the laws as a disaster for human rights and a potential blow to tourism and investment. Several groups of mainly young people protested against the legislation outside Parliament in Jakarta this week. It is expected the new laws will be challenged in court. They apply equally to locals and to foreigners living in Indonesia, or visiting holiday destinations such as Bali. Under the laws, unmarried couples caught having sex can be jailed for up to a year. It's time now to take a look at stories making headlines on Nigerian newspapers. And I begin with the Nigerian News Direct. The major headline here says mixed reactions as CBN limits cash withdrawals. Mixed reactions as CBN limits cash withdrawals. All the details on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. To the front page of the Daily Trust, still talking about the CBN's moves. It says CBN limits cash withdrawals, circulation of 500 naira, 1,000 naira notes, individuals to access 100,000 naira per week, firms 500,000 naira. All right, all the details on the front page of the Daily Trust. And to the First News newspaper now, Naira redesign. CBN limits cash ATM withdrawals to 100,000 naira weekly, 20,000 naira daily. Cash withdrawals above 100,000 naira, 500,000 naira attracts 5% and 10% charges respectively. POS withdrawals pegged at 20,000 naira. All the details on the front page of the First News newspaper. All right, to Punch newspaper now. New Naira customers, companies panic as CBN slashes withdrawal limits. New Naira customers, companies panic as CBN slashes withdrawal limit. Over-the-counter weekly withdrawals, 100,000 naira for individuals, 500,000 naira for firms. POS terminal operators plan nationwide protests, say policy will kill businesses. You'll find all the details on the front page of the Punch newspaper. To the business day now, CBN's next rate decision seen hanging on food inflation. CBN's next rate decision seen hanging on food inflation. Kemi.
Right, the nation is next, and it's leading with an update from Asiwaju Bola Tinubu saying he's the candidate to beat. That's why attacks are coming against him. The former governor of Lagos State, who's also the presidential flag bearer of the All Progressives Congress, is also quoted there speaking on his records, his wealth, and the economy. This was in a BBC interview on Tuesday. Details are in the nation. The Daily Times is next. 2023 election will be free, fair, credible. That's according to President Muhammadu Buhari, given a reassurance there ahead of the general polls next year. Blueprint is what we are looking at now. Despite attacks on INEC facilities, elections must hold. That's from the Sultan of Sokoto and the Christian Association of Nigeria. For this Nigeria, the big story there is on oil theft. Nigeria may lose $23 billion in 2023. That's according to the National Security Advisor, who's gone on to inaugurate an 11-member special investigative panel to curb the menace of oil theft. Let's check out leadership now. Amid fear of losing $23 billion revenue, federal government goes after oil thieves. Of course, this remains a burning issue. Finally is Nature News, leading with millions of Nigerians at risk of food crisis by the year 2023. We spoke about this earlier on the show this morning. Veronica.
Absolutely. Let's get back to another burning issue that a lot of Nigerians didn't go to bed happy yesterday with this news from the CBN. I even doubt if a lot of persons actually slept well, so to speak, because the CBN came out after the redesigning of the Naira. It came out to say that from the 9th of January 2023, that the limit for individual withdrawals will be 100,000 naira, and for organizations that will be 500,000 naira, and anything above that will attract some charges. And then for POS withdrawals and ATM withdrawal, you can only withdraw 20,000 naira cash withdrawal per day. That's from the ATM as well as POS. That's the max that can be withdrawn. And it says that only 200 naira notes will be available at the ATMs. Only 200 naira will be available at the ATMs as we...
Maximum 200 naira.
200 naira maximum, but
no,
lower
naira
notes.
Absolutely.
Then there are any other lower division of the naira. And Nigerians are not finding this funny. A majority of Nigerians have been reacting. According to the papers this morning, there are those who are set to protest this decision by the CBN, especially POS operators. They're saying that this will affect their business. Earlier when we were speaking, we're talking about the fact that POS operators seem to be the ones that will be hard hit by this decision of the CBN.
True, and talk about a New Year gift, because January the 9th
Every New Year comes with an interesting gift.
An interesting gift, and you've said it all. But what beats me is, the issue of consultation. I don't know whether it is a matter of us trivializing consultation, because if there was any form of, positive feedback from any consultations that the federal government or the central bank had with critical groups, including POS operators. We also have another group, is it bank customers also, who have also spoken out against this. Analysts have also voiced their concerns about this, that yes, it is good on paper, but practicability now is another issue. You said, just before we went on the show, about if this is even workable. Let's assume it's workable in the urban areas. What about those in the rural areas? How? And of course, we're still living in the times where we have, internet connectivity is not stable. And you also mentioned the issue of when we have, failed transactions.
Yes.
The customers bear the brunt. How long do we have to wait before such monies are
14
restored?
days.
And when you now bring a principle or a reform or a policy as this, naturally there will be, what's the word now? There'll be people rushing. So naturally there will be failed transactions. There are fears of more failed transactions. There are fears of more internet connectivity not being stable. That will also be on the rise, because people are going to be, moving in the direction that CBN wants us all to move. And let's not forget again, I think I would agree that cash remains king, even though government wants us to go cashless. But at the moment, with the realities on ground, it's the money you have in your pocket that you can talk of. Man, how many people have much in their accounts with the rates at which, things are going, even though government is working on policies to bring things back to, stability?
I agree with you. In fact, I missed one aspect, which has to do with third-party checks that are above 50,000 naira will not be eligible. There will be amounts for you to be able to withdraw certain monies, and you cannot, if the check, perhaps I issue you a check, it can't go beyond 50,000 naira. If it is more than 50,000 naira, you would not be able to withdraw it, and there are charges on all of that as well. Now, the aspect of going cashless, we know the challenges. I mean, have we been able to get those in the rural areas into the net such that they are able to process their monies? Most of these people do not believe in transactions that you do online. They want to see their money. Like you're buying anything, you are giving them cash.
And this is not about illiteracy. We have people who are literate,
yes,
and they would
because of the experiences they have had, where people fake transactions, and then transactions fail, and then the process of getting back your money. I told you 14 days. I had an issue that it took 14 days before my money was, returned to me. And I knew that 14 days, how many people can wait for 14 days? Especially market women who buy on the go all the time. They buy, they source their goods, they sell it today, get back to the market to source another good. How do you expect them to do these transactions? Sometimes you want to use the bank app. It fails. You cannot access it. Now we have all those tech challenges, all those internet challenges. How do you expect these people to run? Okay, are you talking about the e-naira? You want us to go back to the e-naira? There are those who are saying they can't even make use of the app on their phone. How have we ensured that it is easy for people to use all of these measures before we now start saying, okay, we are going, to this level. Yes, the idea is noble, but have you weighed it to look at the pros and the cons? How much effect it's going to have? Because a lot of people who are screaming and crying are business owners. How do you expect them to run their business with just 20,000 naira daily, or 500,000 naira daily? How do you expect to run their businesses? And in case of emergency, how do you expect people to handle it? What are the processes they will have to go through to address issues of emergency? Yes, we need a cashless society. Now, a lot of people are saying, how do we address this? Yes, you want to curb theft, you want to curb issues bordering on kidnapping and all of those. Just yesterday, we're reading on the papers where we said the kidnappers were asking for the new Naira notes.
So which means that what we're trying to avoid is what we're now
still staring
seeing.
us on the face.
It's still a reality for us. And I really don't know how much education the government also put into it. You mentioned the e-Naira initiative moments ago, and you could argue that beyond the launch, what have we or what do we know about the e-Naira app? Who is using it? Who is enjoying it? People embraced it at the start, but how much of benefits can you put to your chest that you're enjoying about the app? For a while now, up until this moment, I've been struggling trying to do transactions with my phone. I mean, I have to practically try 10 or even more times now to get in. And when I finally get in, when I think I'm already there, it takes me back that, internet, we can't go further. And I wonder why now, at this point now, we should be at a more advanced level than we are in now. And then you come and, dump this, just throw this at people. How much engagement, like I said earlier on, how much education for the rural women, for the rural people, how much education can they say they have? Many people are still using the regular phones. How many people are even
where
on
they
Android?
cannot download those apps?
Absolutely. And the issue of fraud is another issue. How much have we curbed that? There's also a substantial chunk of experts who are saying this policy might also open us up to more fraudulent activities.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So what
How
are
do we
doing?
check that?
And
then there's also the aspect where some persons are saying we might have a situation where there might be a black market, so to speak. If you are looking for a huge sum, so there are these persons who might have such amounts come to you, and then they will say that, okay, you have to, this is the rate we are giving if you want this amount, because you cannot access it over the counter and all of that. If also transactions are failing online, as we have been saying. So there are just the pros and cons. Have we weighed it? What are we looking at to addressing these issues, especially with the issue of internet transaction failures? Yes, a lot of persons have said that, okay, maybe because of, most of these tech persons in the banks have left the country, and that is why we are seeing, those failed transactions and all of those issues that we face with our transactions. But that being said, are we also addressing it? There are still tech people in the country. What are we doing to improve on our transactions? Yes, you want us to go cashless, but what are we doing to improve the process of going cashless? And then the timing again is so short. Between now and January the 9th, it's such a short time.
It's about three weeks, of course, and then we're in Christmas season too. The issue of the new Naira notes will soon be the new notes will soon be in circulation, and all that. There's also the issue of the informal sector, because naturally policies like this will affect the common man more, even though it's a general principle, general
SMEs
policy.
are the ones that will be affected
They
the
are
most.
the ones that hold, the mainstay of the economy, because these are people who live. We saw what happened during the COVID season now, how it was really, really real, how people were grappling with what to eat.
Well, there are those POS operators who are saying they are going on protest, and we'll see how government engages with Nigerians moving forward with regards to this development.
They still have an opportunity to do so anyway.
After weeks of unveiling his 80-page manifesto, the APC Presidential Candidate, Bola Tinubu, has since been canvassing for votes by detailing his vision plan for Nigeria. The latest is in London at the Chatham House, where he listed security, employment, economic reform, amongst others, as some of the things he would improve on if elected president. Although many have criticized Bola Tinubu of not being able to tackle Nigeria's problems, the presidential candidate is still very sure he is the only one who can bring the country out of its tentacles. Joining us in the studio is a member of the APC, Oluwaseun Fale. Also in the studio is a political analyst, Biodun Showumi. Gentlemen, good morning. It's good to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning.
Right. Let's begin with your assessment of the APC presidential candidates speaking and perhaps how he's showing at the Chatham House, because that has come under huge criticism after that event. And many has criticized his choice of going to Chatham House to speak about his plans and all of that, he shunned, town halls and all of the meetings that other presidential candidates were invited for in Nigeria, but decided to go on an international platform to speak instead of speaking directly to Nigerians. What do you make of that? Let me begin with you.
Well, in the first instance, we need to acknowledge one thing. Candidates are just like any other candidates. It is up to them to decide how they want to conduct their campaign, whether it's virtually, whether it's physical appearance, town hall meetings, or campaign rallies, or street shows. It's up to candidates to determine that. But that said, in the case of Tinubu, it is also not correct to say that he has not been talking to Nigerians directly. He has had several town hall meetings, which I am aware of. It's all in the newspapers, and televisions. He's at several town hall meetings talking to Nigerians. People are able to engage his views. The concern of those who are actually articulating, is running away from debates and all that, it's strictly because they organize a platform, and these are media believed to have been compromised, and then organizing a platform, asking Tinubu to come. You do not go to the house of your adversary, for dinner.
Well, you need to, expatiate on compromise. They say some of these media have been compromised, and I'm sure a lot of Nigerians want to understand what you mean by.
Yeah, I would gladly say that.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, when you look at Arise TV particularly, less about Channels TV, but more about Arise TV, they editorialize. You'll see the anchor person actually editorializing, on screen. You see highly unprofessional conduct, of the anchor becoming the guest, in so many, virtually on a daily basis. You can't have that happening within the profession of journalism, and nobody can dispute that. Particularly, I don't want to start mentioning individual names, in that station. That is not how these things are done. Number two, we should also remember the fact that prior to this election, Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, BON, has been the one responsible for organizing, unbiased, impartial debate. So what has changed suddenly in 2022-23 elections, and then you have a situation where Arise TV is insisting that you have to attend. Let me give you a good example. It's like asking Atiku to come to TVC or Peter Obi, and I doubt whether they've been here. They would.
Members of the Labour Party have been here. Members of the PDP have been here.
Yes, members of APC have gone to Arise TV.
Right.
Now, but when you ask those presidential aspirants to come, to a TV station they think is sympathetic to their opponent, they'll find it difficult. It's like asking your adversary, to come for dinner in his own house.
Is this supposed to be an issue in the first place, where any political any candidate of any political party goes to any TV station to speak? It shouldn't be a problem.
It shouldn't be a problem, except when people make it a campaign issue. When you have a TV station editorializing and insisting, except you attend my program, even without consultation with you on fixing the dates, not even knowing your own program, that cannot be acceptable. And for me, that is what I mean by compromise. And that should not happen to start with. Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, BON, has always been organizing, political debate. So what is wrong with this election that BON is not being allowed, or BON is not, actually doing that? Because the BON debate is actually a multimedia agency debate. That is, the fact of ownership can influence, how anchors or how things are conducted in one station or the other. But once you have a multimedia agency's approach to it, it builds confidence and trust, in that very process. And I think that is what we need to go back to now, particularly with the experience,
Let me get Oluwaseun's position on this matter. Do you share the same sentiment with him that perhaps because of compromise, in everything he has said, where do you stand with regards to what is the criticism?
I align with him fully, and I think that is the concern of of our party generally. That's unbiased platform with which to disseminate our agenda and our issues. The truth is that fundamentally, the Constitution of Nigeria does not stipulate that a presidential candidate, or any law for that matter, must undertake any debate. But the norm has always been, like he said, for the MDC to organize one that is multi-agency and multi, party-led, that breeds the kind of confidence that we're talking about. And I hope that will happen, and I'm sure if that happens, the candidates would consider it. Indeed, the interaction between a campaign team and media houses that seek to provide a debate platform is nothing new. You always want to see that the platform is, is transparent, and that the questions are balanced. And that's why you see even in established climes where the management team or the strategy team of any presidential candidates will engage the House or the organizers as to the rules and regulations underpinning those debates. So it's not a strange idea for us to seek to have a balanced platform which
when you say balance, because that some will say is relative, what do you describe as being balanced?
Basically devoid of of biased opinions and subjectivity. That's all we're saying. There's nothing to that.
There's this other question of is a debate a true test of capacity and character? When perhaps a candidate comes out to say, yes, I am giving myself for opening up to a debate, but does that really prove that this person is capable of delivering on his promises and has the capacity to carry on the reins of whatever position is going for?
Well, basically, to be honest, debate always gives an insight into your plans. Right. It does not tell you the details. It does not tell you practically how things will happen. You only have a broad view of what the person is trying to do, but not the specifics in real terms. For me, with Chatham House debate, we've actually seen some specifics, being talked about. I'll give you a good example. Right. I actually watched the whole program, and I went back to rewatch it quite a number of times. You have the impression of a candidate who understands what the problems in the country, and I am very, very impressed with the way that is linking the domestic policies to our foreign policies, to the extent that I got a call from the ambassador coordinating the diplomatic platform, Ambassador Ganela, Lawal, yesterday on this very particular issue, saying that it's not common for candidates to do that in Nigeria, but Tinubu has actually linked, the domestic policies, to our foreign policies. So for me, that's a plus. Then you also see, the link between economic security and our national security. That was clearly put out in the open. The need to decentralize a centralized electricity generation and distribution system, to unbundle it, was actually also hurting the public. The monetary policies and so many other things were actually out in specifics. I think we got more out of that than just people giving us a broad views and all that. I know that some people complain. I read some of the comments about his style, the style of delivery, management.
Yes, teamship.
Yeah, the teamship, which people complain about. Me, I am a fan of shared governance. Probably maybe because of my home background in United Kingdom. And I think Tinubu media handlers actually chose the right place to do that, which is in UK. In UK, even when it comes to employment, ask anybody. The focus are always your ability to delegate, teamwork. Teamwork. Those are the issues they look for in your leadership skills. If you don't have that, forget it, you won't get a job. And the same thing applies to government. So we have a candidate who came to Chatham House, out of about 10 questions, he answered 4, and he delegated 6, to those who will work with him. And for me, that's about shared governance. It's a good ethos that actually brings out the best capable brains, in a team to deliver on the plans of the principal. Not only that, it also shows that not one person knows it all, and you are willing to bring in the necessary people required to deliver on your objectives. So I am not one of those who feel concerned that, wow, other people answered the question. The man answered 4 out of about 10 questions, and I think I'm comfortable with that, and he did that very effectively. So it's something which we are not used to in Nigeria, but we are beginning to see, the issue of shared governance and shared learning coming, up for debates.
But Chatham House, in reacting to this matter of teamship, said that their chairman was ambushed, and that Tinubu's delegating his team to respond to the question was undermined, or he was asked to undermine its normal arrangement, that it undermined their normal arrangement in Chatham House. And I wonder what your reaction is to what they are saying.
I want to believe that the essence of inviting Tinubu to Chatham was to listen to him. Right. And in giving and delivering his speech for about 30 minutes, he was listened to. Every other further engagement out of that is secondary to the primary idea of his giving his ideas and his plans for Nigeria. Importantly to note is that our foreign policy articulation is a continuation of our domestic plans. And all of those foreign policies engagement are to actualize and promote our domestic agenda. And we also have to understand that Nigeria is a very, very important country in the continent, and of course, much more important in the sub-region. And all Ashwaju has done with that speech is to situate that importance in the global community, to portray that, look, his government will be much more responsible to the responsibility of Nigeria within the sub-region and the African continent as a whole. And that message was aptly delivered in that speech, and I see no reason for concern. The most important thing is listening to him, and he gave his speech as he planned to.
We should also, if you allow me to add, that apart from Nigeria itself, the choice of London, it's quite very important. Right. The location of the highest concentration of Nigerians outside Nigeria in any part of the world is actually in the southeast of London. Peckham, Camberwell area, just about 4 kilometers down the road from Royal Institute of International Affairs, which we call Chatham House. So that's quite very significant and very important, to not only engage Nigerians at home, but also engage Nigerians in diaspora. We've been talking about diaspora voting. Yes, it has not happened, but they contribute significantly, to our foreign currency inflow into our country. So therefore, it's quite very important that they are engaged. And I'm pleased that not only Tinubu, Atiku has gone to Chatham House. I'm pleased all of them are going there to actually talk to Nigerians, because there has to be a bridge between home and a huge community outside Nigeria.
And that is what he has achieved with his showing at Chatham House.
Absolutely. Right. And quite very robust. Many, even some of them did ask personal questions,
Absolutely.
issues, which I am very impressed with. And Tinubu decided to open up, and said, look, let us talk about it. No holds barred on the issues of specifics relating to security. We know it's not a general, but he detailed somebody who knows about, who can deal with the issue, who has an experience of dealing, with security situation to answer that question. On different
issues of the economy as well.
On the economy, he did the same thing. He called on economy and job creation, called on Wale Edun, who happened to be a former commissioner for finance in Lagos State, who he had worked with, who he knew quite all right that would be competent, to deal with the issue. So, at times, leadership is not about you doing things yourself. You should be able to identify clearly, the skills needed to do the job. It's like a manager. A manager cannot be the security man. You cannot be the factory worker, while at the same time, the human resource manager, while at the same time trying to manage the whole complex. So you must be able to identify the appropriate skills, human resources needed to achieve certain goals. And that's exactly what we've seen, which Tinubu in Tinubu speaks, called teamship. For me, it's about teamwork and ability to deliver and also to govern the relationship, within your team. And that, we have seen that effectively, showcased at Chatham House. Yes, correctly, Chatham House has not, they've never had that experience of people bringing in their own
delegates to speak.
Yes, but it's also another innovation. Don't be surprised. You begin to see this happening, from time to time. For instance, in NDI, in United States, National Endowment for Democracy, NED, that has not happened. But you will begin to see this happening because it's even more instructive. It's not just about a candidate's ability to cram figures and cram things like we do in schools and then regurgitate it. No, this is about a candidate saying, listen, I do not know it all. I have a team that will achieve the objective. And teamwork is excellent. Teamwork, achieves objective rather than one person. We want to move away from an era where we think a messiah, somebody, the leader is the messiah. No, there's no messiah anywhere. We all have to work together to save our country. Right. And that message actually went out, brilliantly.
Right. Do you think that we understand, our relationship with the United Kingdom and their position in our country thus far? Do you think that the person of Asiwaju Tinubu has been able to sell himself convincingly to perhaps garner their support for the election? Because you also recall that he mentioned something about the West not trusting President Buhari enough. Do you think that he's been able to show that he can be trusted?
I think over time, with his engagement with the Western world generally, Asiwaju has shown to be a man that can be trusted. I know for a fact that he's been personal friends for so many ambassadors, United States, United Kingdom ambassadors to Nigeria, and that's really because of the personal relationship and the ethos that he knows he brings to bear on general democratic issues that are important to the Western world. So I have no concern that that trust will be built, and this is one of the building blocks. And importantly, it also is that that forum was also to speak to Nigerians in diaspora. You will see that even in the engagement that day, one of the key issues was about diaspora engagement in voting and civic responsibility in Nigeria. That question did come up, and it speaks to one of the cardinal points in the action plan under the foreign policy agenda to encourage and work with the National Assembly to deepen the process by which the diasporans can get involved in voting and voting process in Nigeria. And Asiwaju has reiterated further that given their financial and economic contribution to Nigerian economy, it's also very important that they also have a say as to who become the leaders of Nigeria. And in that way, we would encourage and work with the National Assembly to bring that to bear. But of course, with the understanding and the need for INEC to also live up to its responsibility to demonstrate, as we require them to do during this process, the forthcoming election, to demonstrate the sanctity of the election, to demonstrate the process, that the process is first and foremost easy for those that are in Nigeria, before we then introduce, the mail-in ballots that a diaspora voting will require. So this sort of forum is very, very useful for building this sort of rapport that is necessary to generate trust. The key issues for any Western government, particularly the UK, US, it's this to see that those that will be entrusted with the leadership of Nigeria are mindful of their international, regional, and sub-regional obligations and leadership requirements. And Ashwaju demonstrated that by saying specifically that within sub-Africa, the West African sub-region, we will continue to collaborate both diplomatically and militarily to reduce strife, to reduce cross-border terrorism, and those are the key issues bordering the global norm as we speak.
Absolutely. I want to ask you the same question, if he has been able to show that he can be trusted, especially by trust coming from the Western world as he spoke, just like the question I asked him just now, talking about trusting that he'll be able to take the country to where it's necessary. The Western world can trust him, because that statement he made with regards to the West not trusting Buhari enough with regards to arms purchase and all of it is also another issue of concern for a lot of Nigerians.
Yes, the issue of the West not trusting Buhari, which he actually mentioned, he didn't go into details.
Yeah.
It's actually about a human rights record, the Nigerian Army human rights record, as perceived by the West, and how that influenced arms purchases. No doubt about that. I mean, even we faced that problem under Jonathan, President Jonathan, when they refused to sell the arms. Buhari is not the only one facing it, because they have their own concerns. They use their human rights, to drive their foreign policy, and that is what the West does. So because of that, the West did not particularly have any problem with Buhari as a person, but they have some concerns in relation to a human rights record, particularly in relation to the military in Nigeria, which in any case, many of the cases complain about. The Nigerian military, keep investigating them. So therefore, Tinubu is actually, that is why he was not categorical on that very area, but he's saying maybe, maybe not. But what he's saying is that we have to respond to the concerns of those who are selling arms to us, with a view to be able to access the necessary equipment needed to, fight crime and fight terrorism in our country. But he also gave out something which is quite very innovative, which will resonate, with the Western world, which is when he made a reference to blood oil. You will recall the issue of blood diamond in Sierra Leone, and how that became a major problem, and then the global world had to get fixated on, if you steal the diamond and you don't have a place to sell it, it will now become so difficult to do that. And that's exactly what they did, and eventually they're able to solve the issue of blood diamond. So Tinubu brought in the issue of blood oil. That is, yes, he acknowledged the fact that part of the problem we're facing economically is the theft of oil, of our oil. Nobody can deny that. But he came out with a solution that, look, I will chase, the blood oil. That is not just about preventing it from being stolen to start with in Nigeria, but they will trace the sources, where these are sold, and then ensure that there is an international resolve, to block that. So once you're able to block it, and they can't get them sold, there'll be no need to steal them to start with. And that will resonate very, very well with the West, because nobody has done that. Nobody's talking about that. And no country in the whole world, has actually, been able to learn from the blood diamond experience and then apply it to their own domestic situation. For me, that is innovative. And you can't take it away from him. It will play very well, with the Western world.
Now, he also spoke about addressing the issue of small arms and light weapons, which is a major challenge in the country as we speak. It's been a challenge mopping up these weapons across the country. We've seen, you mentioned the issue of our borders, addressing the border challenge, border security and all of it. Could you just quickly speak to this matter?
I mean, we know that the cross-border, transportation of small arms has been, and large weapons has been the cause, one of the major cause of the insurgency and some insecurity that we have. And that's why it is also important for a much more extensive collaboration within the sub-region and the continent to eradicate the sort of strifes that, encourage that. But most importantly, in dealing with that, you need to go to our security initiatives under the action plan, which is basically to secure the borders in a way that prevents the proliferation of these arms into the country. And by that doing is by ensuring that the Nigerian custom, the immigration services, and of course the Nigerian security architecture as a whole are up to the task in ensuring that some of these arms do not find their way into the country. And in that doing, we will prevent some of the sort of security challenges that we see around, particularly from unrest in Libya, Mali coming into the country. And that's key. And it is by international collaboration that really that can be done. And that's really one of the really key subjects that he touched on at his...
Yes, and he mentioned that Buhari has done his best. President Buhari has done his best with addressing issues of insecurity. A lot of Nigerians do not agree with that, looking at what we are going through with regards to kidnapping, the number of bandit activity, and all of it.
Oh, no doubt. I actually am one of those who used to be very, very concerned about the state of security in the country. But when you take a sober look, do a sober assessment. Is the situation the same as what Buhari inherited? When Buhari came to power, about 15 or 17 local governments were actually under occupation, with ISWAP, Islamic States in West Africa's flag, actually planted on our soil. That was the situation. And the man has done his best. He's been able to degrade the capacity of Boko Haram to occupy any part of our country. They went back to the forest. Yes, we have not totally eliminated Boko Haram, but we've also seen the nature of terrorism, of insurgency. It has mutated. It's partly what has mutated into banditry, into increase in kidnapping and all that. That's the nature of insurgency, and that's the nature of terrorism. So, but again, we have to deal with that. And that is what Tinubu is saying, look, we will deal with this situation because but we must acknowledge the progress made by Buhari, and he can't run away from that. While at the same time, those who disagree with Buhari or those who won't see anything good about Buhari or Tinubu will continue to say that, look, the man wants to continue the mystery. He wants kidnapping to continue, but that's not true. We know the fact. The fact of the matter is Boko Haram is no longer occupying any part of our country today. Yes, they are still in the forest. Yes, our gallant military officers are working day and night to ensure that they make it so the forest so uncomfortable for them. While at the same time, we need to increase, the number of our personnel, as explained, at the Chatham House, to deal, with the security situation. Nothing new will be done other than look for a way to resolve the issue of Western concerns about our human rights record with a view to have access to arms, while at the same time increase the manpower and training of the Nigerian military.
Now, he spoke about some personal issues, and if you look at the papers this morning, you see that report on the papers talking about how he made his monies and how it is that he is one of the most criticized candidates. Do you think that he addressing all of these issues, perhaps we put these issues to rest finally?
No, I don't think so, because they are politically motivated in the first place. They are non-issue in the first place, but the opposition keep bringing them up. Like he said, and like you alluded to, I don't think that there's any politician in Nigeria that has been widely and extensively investigated as much as Ashwaju. And that's why, even despite those investigations, there has never been any prosecution brought against him for any financial fraud or any public service fraud or anything. So it's really surprising when people then insinuate that he's corrupt or is this or is that. So really, we believe that he won't stop, because typically when you're a front runner in elections of this nature, people throw all sorts of data at you, and it's not something that we envisage that will stop. But him speaking about it and putting those records straight is well and good, so that at least you can then take things from his perspective if you wish to. The truth is that his wealth has never been in doubt for us that know him. It comes from an extensively rich family. He's, like he said, inherited wide-ranging real estate that he has used his education and his relationship to then nurture, and and has brought about tremendous yield. So we don't really understand why the challenges and that all of this talk about his wealth. But importantly also is to speak about his age and educational background and all of that. Every document that he has presented over time has always been consistent. And truly, we're surprised that at the time that Mr. Tinubu is running for the president is when they're now debating whether he went to primary school or he didn't go to primary school or he went to university. So, like I said, these insinuations will not stop. But we're happy to put the record straight and let Nigerians decide for themselves who is better able and capable to lead the country. The truth is that if you look at the record of other candidates, they are nowhere near what his academic achievements and records are, or what his performances are in office.
All right. Any final words before we wrap up now?
Yeah, in a country like this, people hang on a lot of things in the air without actually, executing the person. When you throw up a lot of cloudy things and just to confuse voters, so if you can't convince them, then confuse them. Right. Then people will begin to ask the question, can we really trust the person? But that's what I think is going on. But I think the opponents of Chief Asiwaju Tinubu are not even helping their own cause, in the sense that why not focus on selling your plans for Nigeria? This is a man who is selling his vision and is now moving beyond that, appearing presidential, coming up with a theme. And you are still busy with, did they go to primary school or which secondary school? I mean, it's quite ridiculous. I think we need to move away from that. They need to change their strategy and then engage Tinubu on his vision, engage him on his plan to transform our country. This is the only way our country will get enriched, by this presidential election process experience.
All right, and this is where we leave the conversation. We must thank you, a member of the APC, Oluwaseun Faleye, as well as political analyst, Biodun Showumi, for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And the news update now. An executive bill to establish the National Social Investment Program Agency for the management and implementation of the National Social Investment Program has scaled second reading at the Nigerian Senate. The bill was read for the second time after a debate led by the Senate leader, Senator Ibrahim Gobir, at plenary. The bill seeks to provide a statutory and institutional framework for implementation of the National Social Investment Program. National Assembly correspondent TJ Swadilye reports.
Plans to institutionalize the National Social Investment Program, initiated by the Buhari administration in 2016, is in top gear as the Nigerian Senate begins the consideration of the establishment bill. The Senate leader, in his lead debate, briefed lawmakers on the general principles of the bill and how it will impact the lives of citizens.
Since the inception of NSIP in 2016 to date, the following key achievements have been recorded. 1 million youths have been empowered through the Empower program, and the additional 500,000 are undergoing various training under the program as provided by Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief.
The bill elicited a robust debate from lawmakers who all acknowledged the significance of this piece of legislation. But some of them picked holes in the implementation process of the safety net programs. They now hope that the new bill will ensure it is more transparent, efficient, and effective.
What we had was that people got the handouts, it didn't matter to them, they were just looking forward to more, and there was no arrangement whereby people could be monitored, and whatever was given to them could also be monitored.
Accusations have been said about the implementation of this program. Now, we are pleased that it has come as an executive bill for us to establish a system, through which, a proper implementation, can take place.
I believe that this is an effort by the administration to ensure that there is a legacy for this program, and also a legacy that can make the program more transparent, more efficient, and more effective.
The bill scaled second reading and has been referred to the Senate Committee on Special Duties for further legislative action, and it is expected to return to the chamber with its report in 2 weeks. Tijesu Adeoye, TVC News, Abuja.
Stigma, discrimination, poverty, poor access to quality health care. These are some of the problems people with disabilities face in the country. To celebrate persons living with disabilities, some NGOs are educating them on their rights as well as enabling them with free medical treatment to improve their health. Inyoluwa Bola has details.
About 1.3 billion people experience significant disability worldwide, making the living conditions and accessibility to healthcare more difficult. Michael is a person with disability, but more importantly, an athlete who has not allowed the healthcare system affect his passion. Truly, to every disability, there is an ability. He says the government needs to do more in ensuring there is total inclusion of persons with disabilities.
To healthcare for persons living with disability in Nigeria is not that accessible. In Lagos, some parts, yes, they've put into consideration of persons living with disability when it comes to their constructions of hospitals and all that. Generally in Nigeria, we are still lacking behind when it comes to access to healthcare for persons with disability.
To celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, advocates from various NGOs are sensitizing the disabled on their rights as well as giving them free medical treatment.
Nigeria has a community who are still fighting, who are still trying to ensure that we understand the policies that are even available. That is why it is important to even educate the community, the people, about even the policies that protect them.
One thing I always preach is openness. Let persons or medical personnel be very open to understand persons with disability. It's more or less like having a disability etiquette. How would they want to treat persons with disability?
How much budget are you budgeting for healthcare? We had an Abuja convention that says 15%. We are still at 80% in Nigeria. And how are these budgets implemented? What is the focus of the implementation? Who are those monitoring the implementation? So sometimes you give 9% of budget to healthcare, but nobody's monitoring it. So we're not even sure if the budget is actually going to where they should go to.
As Nigeria races to achieve universal health coverage as part of the SDG goals by 2030, these advocates are calling on individuals, medical professionals, and government to help eradicate discrimination and inequality among persons with disabilities. Inyoluwa Bola, TVC News, Lagos.
It is 79 days to the 2023 general election, and presidential candidates are taking their campaigns around the country. A former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Olisa Agbakuba, while making his observations about the ongoing campaign, says candidates should do more to proffer solutions to Nigeria's existential threats. We have details in this report.
For the senior lawyer and activist, the present realities in Nigeria make the 2023 polls a defining moment, which he says raises the need for a thorough search for who will succeed President Muhammadu Buhari. Olisagbakoba Legal has now released a policy report of some of the big concerns which should be addressed by the next president. The document also offers solutions which it wants presidential candidates to consider and include into their agendas as a way to hasten Nigeria's political and economic transformation.
The illegitimacy of the Constitution remains a problem. The Constitution was given to us, bequeathed by the military. I will encourage the candidates to look at that. Second would be obviously the issue of restructuring. The candidates didn't quite stress this, but what it simply means is we have a centrifugal government in Abuja doing far too many things. So just distribute the powers. So that's number 2 on the political side. 3 is the absence of local government. It's a big, big gap. No candidate refers to it. I thought it's important for us to know because the local governments deal with 90% of the population of Nigeria.
According to the convener, most of the candidates have failed to make specific recommendations on how to revive Nigeria's ailing economy, especially in boosting her revenues.
We have 133 million Nigerians living in poverty. And that amounts to about 63% of the Nigerian population. That is horrible. Very few candidates discuss this, in a way that I think will make the necessary impact. That the candidates must focus resources. They must put resources in health, in education, in employment. Then we can say, yeah, we are seeing it. Right now,
in his words, this is one of the most issue-based elections in Nigeria's history. A good opportunity for the electorate and the candidates to contribute to the country's rebirth. Kemi Foladeyemo, TVC News, Lagos.
All right, before we went on the break, we told you that we are counting down to the 2023 elections, and a former president of the Nigeria Bar Association, Dr. Olisagbakoba, has made his observations about the ongoing campaigns, and he says candidates should do more to provide solutions to Nigeria's existential threats. He joins us now on TVC Breakfast. Good morning, Dr. Agbakuba, and thank you for joining us. Now, when I looked at the report you released, the policy document you released, one of the things you spoke about in that document is that Nigeria has never been this disunited and disordered. And I'm wondering, from your point of view, how did we get to this point?
I think with the region politics and the fact that politicians are generally more interested in themselves than in the nation, so a lot of issues have arisen. And as you know, we have at least 3 major fault lines: ethnic, religion, and language. So the politicians, unfortunately, have played into this and created the most divided country in the last 8 years. But the excitement, having said that, is that the issues in the current electoral cycle is very exciting, because for the first time we have real issues thrown up by all the candidates. And I've read them, and I compliment all the candidates for, at least for the first time, focusing on some of the issues which, if implemented by whoever wins, is likely to see a new Nigeria. And that's what we all pray for.
Right, I'm talking about this issue-based. I would like you to, give us some more context as to why you think this particular electioneering period is good for us as a people, as a nation, looking at the issues at display, but then you also talk about the solutions not, or the preferred solutions not satisfactory enough.
Yeah, well, in the last 8 years, in the 2019 elections, there were no issues. 2015, none. 2011, none. So the fact that we have issues today is very encouraging. So now, all the candidates speak about how they will unite Nigeria. So they all recognize the divisions that we have. All the candidates speak to the issue of insecurity. So they recognize that that is a problem. All the candidates speak to the issue of restructuring even though they do it in different ways. All the candidates speak to the issue of mass poverty. So at least they recognize what Nigerians are looking for. Now, what I thought was a bit missing, which is why I would encourage the candidates to perhaps take a second look at their manifestos, is the issue of insecurity. Insecurity started in the Boko Haram area, and it's like a small mustard seed that has absolutely swallowed up Nigeria. Some candidates say that they will upgrade the police force to about 1 million. Others say they will look at the Lake Chad area, which is a very volatile area for Al-Qaeda activity in West Africa. But whatever they need to do, what's important is for them to be able to proffer clear-cut solutions that we as voters can say, yes, this candidate seems to be the one who, if voted, is likely to deal with the problem. The other point that was raised in our report concerns the local government structure. I thought the candidates should have addressed that in more detail. 90% of Nigerians reside at the local government region. And you recall, even the president, Buhari, had said that the fragile nature of the local governments was a source of concern. So I'd like to see the candidates speak to the issue of protecting the funding of local governments. Right now, we know that state governors take all their money and give them whatever they want. Now, the local governments are therefore unable to deliver. So I'd like for the candidates to really tighten up that part of their manifesto. We need to see a democratically elected local government structure in 2023. So some of the candidates need to speak to that issue in a more aggressive way.
Now, speaking about the matter of insecurity, there are those who perhaps think that this matter of disunity, like you pointed out, is also fueling the insecurity crisis that we are facing, because certain religious groups have been tagged as those who are fueling the security crisis we are facing. Certain groups, ethnic groups, have been tagged as those also fueling this crisis. And I wonder what you say to that.
Yes and no. I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. But what's important is to identify insecurity as a big issue. And in doing so, I think the candidates need to spend a bit more time reflecting on the nature of the security architecture that they will put in place if elected. I think the candidates need to consider the importance of space technology. None of them address that issue. Now, if you talk about Zambezi Forest, this is not something that's too big. But if you want to have a new architecture, I personally will recommend the deployment of satellite technology. I will also recommend the deployment of what we call in intelligence photons, that is photographic intelligence and communications intelligence. I don't think that resolving the insecurity crisis in Nigeria is a big issue. What's important is for the candidates to be very clear in their manifesto as to exactly what they will do if elected to resolve the issue of insecurity. Tied to insecurity is the issue you raised, this the fact of religion and all that. But I feel that if the security architecture is strong enough, that will calm down the divided Nigeria that we've seen thus far.
You've also questioned the legitimacy of the amended 1999 Constitution and called for previously an autonomous local government. Looking at the ongoing exercise on constitutional amendment across the states' houses of assembly, what are your thoughts, especially when you look at some states who are voting against local government autonomy? And that is one of the key points you raised in your report. What do you make of this, this back and forth?
I think that the entire, well, let's start by saying that the constitution handed to us in 1999 is not legitimate because the constitution said we the people, but that's not true. That was given to us by the military. So starting from there is to recognize that all the constitutional amendment processes in the National Assembly lacks authenticity and legitimacy. And I'm just thinking that one of the ways to resolve all this is for a candidate to absolutely lay down a clear plan. Right now, everything is mixed up. I would like to see a candidate to say, if elected, I'm likely to do A, B, C, D, without prejudice to what's been going on. What's going on is chaos. We have the National Assembly moving in one direction, and you have the state assemblies moving in another direction. I'd like to see a presidential candidate say to Nigerians, if elected, I recognize that the constitution is not legitimate. I will resolve that. If elected, I will do A, B, C, D. And in particular, I'd like to hear a candidate say that I will legitimize the 774 or even more local governments. And I will also provide constitutional funding for that process. Because the state governors have sat on the local governments in the last 20 years and rendered them useless. And therefore, at the base of Nigeria, you find an extremely fragile governance system. And that's why we're not developing. And that's why we have this high number of people in poverty. So it's a crucial area for the candidates to focus on.
But what you hear most persons say is that they recognize local government autonomy. They recognize the fact that this level of government has its responsibilities, and they support whatever it is, and they also, separate themselves from whatever corruption that the president pointed out that is going on. Is a constitutional amendment the way to go to addressing that, really?
I think so. Sorry. I think so. The fact is, the local government structure is not working. That's just the fact. It's not rocket science to say so. If you want the local governments to work, then I need to hear a presidential candidate say, I'm going to make it work. So President Buhari was very correct when he indicated that most state governors do not fund the local governments to the extent budgeted from the federation account. And that's why they're not developing. That's absolutely why you have chaos in the local governments. They don't do anything. All they do is, at the end of the month, they go collect their stipends and go home. They have no work. So if we're going to turn around poverty, you remember the poverty report just came out indicating that 133 million Nigerians live in abject poverty, education, health, living standards, and employment. How do you turn this around? The only way you can do so is to have a new government structure close to the people. But if the state governors of whatever party would continue the practice of disabling the local government process, I don't think we're going to go anywhere. We'll just have another 4 years, and in 2027, we'll be probably 200 million Nigerians in abject poverty. So it is fundamental that the presidential candidates recognize, and indeed they do, actually, in their manifestos, they do. So what they need to do is to make sure that when they come into office, whoever comes into office, will take practical, immediate steps to correct that anomaly. Very important if Nigeria must move forward.
But do you honestly think that this is a solution that can only come from the commander-in-chief, the president? Because many share your opinion that we need to get it right in, enshrining local government autonomy. But then there are even other learned individuals from even the legal society, legal circles, who say, ideally, our own style of federalism is the federal government and the state government. The local government is an appendage, they say, of the state government. And so, you know, this issue of autonomy that many are clamoring for might just be elusive.
Yes, I get your point. I mean, there are different views about what is the structure of the local government. But we've got to also take into consideration the type of there's no one size fits all federation. So you will find in federal systems across the world, they shape their federalism to fit what will work for them. Now, what I think, with respect, will work for us is to recognize that in the last 20-something odd years, state governors have pocketed local government systems, and therefore there's a need to protect them. I take the point that the local government system may be seen as part of the state, administrative structures, and so why do you need to provide a separate constitutional process for them? Yes, I understand that. But has it worked? That's the issue. It hasn't worked. So if we really want to address the issue of development in Nigeria, then we're going to say to ourselves, how do we tackle multidimensional poverty? The multidimensional poverty index that just came out indicates, for instance, that Sokoto State has 98% of its population living in absolute abject poverty. And in other states, that is also reflected. Now, what's the cause of this? I will argue that the cause is the failure of the local government system. So the solution for me, and I don't say I'm right, I'm just offering a solution. The solution for me is to strengthen that process of government. You've got to keep them isolated in a way that they can function without the state governors breathing down their neck. That's my own personal opinion. And if that is correct, then I would recommend to the candidates to develop a position to strengthen the local governments when they are in office. And if that happens, I can assure you we will see dramatic change in Nigeria's development trajectory.
All right, let's speak to the matter of economy now. Most of the candidates have spoken to the fact that they would want to move Nigeria from a consumption nation to a production nation, a country that produces. And then they also talked about industrialization. And from your document, you said Nigeria is in technical recession. I'm wondering if this measures, production, industrialization, is the way to go to move us out of this technical recession that we have found ourselves.
I didn't quite hear you. Your voice was sort of like muddled. So could you come back? Could you repeat the question, please?
Right. I said that most of the documents that I've read with regards to the manifestos from the presidential candidate, a majority of them have said that they want to move Nigeria from a consumption nation, from being a nation that consumes to being a nation that produces what it consumes, basically. And they also spoke about industrialization. And I'm asking if these are the way to go to move us out of the technical recession that you pointed out in your document.
Yes. So you're discussing the issue of what is the appropriate economic framework that we ought to be adopting. And that, I think, is the very true question. Because there are two things here. There is the political side and there's the economic side. And both of them we refer to as the political economy. So once we fix the political side, the issue of local government, the issue of restructure, the type of constitution, the issue of insecurity, I would advise the candidates to begin to look at what type of economic policy do they want to put in place. I mean, we have state capitalism and we also have market fundamentalism. So which is it that they want to use? Whatever system any candidate feels would work for his agenda. It must be clearly articulated. It must be very specific. I find that if a lot of the manifestos are a bit too general, and we need to see more flesh. But what I think would be relevant in moving Nigeria forward, because we've been lagging for the last 20 years. And if we really want to leapfrog, then we've got to consider how to link what I think are the 5 important elements of any viable economic policy, together with the macroeconomic part of it. Now, if we do that, we will do something very crucial. We will cease to be import dependent. We will become productive. We will move from consuming to producing. The question of foreign exchange will become irrelevant. The reason why Forex is such a big issue is because we don't produce anything. We're importing everything. So an economy that is not growing, that is not producing, that is not manufacturing, cannot be said to be a stable economy. So the candidates will, of course, have to interrogate how they will reverse our dependence on importation of everything. And that is the only way we can put our people to work. Right now, we're importing toothpicks, we're importing soap, we're importing, name it. And it's absolutely ridiculous to see this level of importation when we have people at home that can do it. So I would expect that the president of Nigeria in 2023 will put Nigeria first. You know, like what President Trump used to say. And we thought maybe he was mad. There's a certain sense in the madness of President Trump. If I were a Nigerian president, I will put Nigerians first, because that's the only way that we can grow the economy. Is it not ridiculous that we have to import all our fuel? So we're importing inflation, whilst we have the crude oil right under our soil. That is the reason why we can't control the price of oil. If we had refineries working, and I don't see what is rocket science about the refineries working, then you will create jobs. But if you are importing fuel, you are importing inflation. Everything imported has an inflation index attached to it. So a Nigerian president, and we need to see that in the manifestos of all the candidates, should address how the economy will grow and stop being a consumptive economy and becomes a productive economy.
Right, but quickly, looking at the interventions the central bank has introduced few weeks to the general election of next year, how sustainable do you really think they are? And are they policies that you would like to see in the next administration? The new Naira notes, that may have come to stay, but then looking at the cashless policy drive of the federal government with its announcement yesterday, what do you think about that?
That's an exceedingly touchy area for me. I think the central bank is overstretched. The role of the central bank across the world is macroeconomic stability, financial system stability, and monetary policy rates management. The present central bank has gone way beyond its remit and is interfering in fiscal policy, and there's the distortion between what the Ministry of Finance is doing and the CBN. So in fact, the question you raised is an important one, because I'd like to see a Nigerian president say to the central bank, you're doing far too much. And a new central bank legislation ought to be proposed to limit the role of the central bank to exactly what central banks do. The central bank is not a development bank, but the central bank is throwing money around the whole place. That's not the job of the central bank. That's the job of a development bank. So a Nigerian president that comes into office next year should understand exactly what a CBN should be doing. And then the Ministry of Finance ought to be engaged in developmental roles that can create jobs. At the end of the day, what we all need in Nigeria is jobs, jobs and jobs. That's all that we need. The CBN is not designed to create jobs. The CBN is designed to control lending rates, exchange rates, and in particular control inflation. That's the job of the central bank. And then have financial systems stability. That's, for me, is the traditional core function of the bank. So I would like to see a Nigerian president say to the central bank next year, you are doing far too much. I'm going to propose legislation to curtail the role that you play in the Nigerian economy.
Still looking at the matter of the Nigerian economy, there's still another sensitive matter which has to do with our debt burden. The finance minister came out recently to say that we do not need debt relief, that we are meeting up our obligation, so to speak. But when the next president comes on board, how would you like for him to address the matter of our debt burden?
To address the matter of what? Sorry, I didn't get that last part.
Address the matter of our debt burden.
We don't have a debt burden. We simply have a very poor fiscal framework. Now, the first thing you do as a government, now let me talk about whoever becomes president, is to say, exactly how much do I need to borrow? And this is what we'll call PSBR. So there's a public sector borrowing requirement. You've got to determine what that is. And this public sector borrowing requirement must be such that would add to the Nigerian economy. It's not go pay salaries. It must be productive. That's one. But before you even determine what you want to borrow, you must ask yourself, exactly what do I have in my bank? I don't know whether you recall that the Minister of Finance herself said, oh, we have suddenly discovered that we have 33 trillion naira locked away in what is called MOFI, that is the Ministry of Finance Incorporated. This is an entity that houses a lot of the government assets. And she also said that the huge Nigerian Railway Corporation is valued at 20 million naira only. So what I would say before we start talking about debt burden is to ask, what exactly do we have in our bank? What are our assets? I was once involved in a case concerning the abandoned federal government secretariat in Ikoyi. It's been abandoned for the last 40 years. The value of that building is about 140 billion. Now, if that thing was sold and not left standing empty, it would fix the east-west road. So we need to look in, and I also saw a report from the Federal Ministry of Justice. It was trying to harmonize all abandoned landed property in Nigeria owned by the federal government. And if I recall correctly, the value was put at something like 20 trillion. So we have 20 trillion coming out of abandoned land of the federal government. We have 33 trillion being stated by the Minister of Finance. That is 53 trillion. Our current budget is 22 trillion. There's a deficit of 7 trillion. So if you put all this together and do all the calculations, you find that we're actually in surplus. But the problem is no one is looking at these issues. That's the problem. So I would expect a Nigerian president to be very, very, very savvy on finances. Look inwards. It's just like a household. The first thing you do before you borrow money to pay school fees is to ask exactly what do I have in my bank. If I have enough money to pay school fees, why should I go and borrow? So I need to see an audit of federal government's finances to determine whether we actually need to borrow anything. I don't think we need to borrow anything. I need to see a president grow our GDP at double digits, cut our lending rates to single digits, and that will spur employment and jobs and create wealth. That's what I need to see a Nigerian president do in 2023.
And you also profile a solution, that is tied to Nigeria's economy, this time around in the legal sector, where you are a major stakeholder in. You're talking about the need to introduce an administration of civil justice bill. We have the criminal justice element, and now you're talking about the civil justice element, which you say will help to hasten proceedings in court as against the delays that the regular courts are fraught with.
Yeah, okay. You are touching a micro issue in a macro problem. The macro problem is that we have complete legal failure in Nigeria. It takes a case filed at the High Court, 15 years to get to the Supreme Court. So who's likely to invest in this sort of country where the laws are unstable, sanctity of contract is unclear? So what I was saying there is that the president of Nigeria next year needs to dismantle the legal and judicial systems and create a new system that is efficient and functional and can meet the interests of not just poor people, but people who want to invest money. So I would be dismantling the entire legal and judicial system and creating and erecting a new, fresh one. And all those laws I have referred to in the report that will be released would be important in achieving the process that I have identified. If you have legal failure, no one's going to come here. If your institutions don't work, if you have regulatory failure, then it's unlikely that people want to come to invest. Another point I need to point out, just going back to the issue you raised about our so-called debt burden. I have worked in Apapa for 40 years. I have never seen a more disunited place like Apapa. All the roads don't work, yet the Customs Controller General says that Apapa ports can give the federal government 20 billion naira every day. That comes to about 7.6 trillion a year. So why isn't the federal government working on it? That is an area I would expect any of the candidates to absolutely look into. Apapa ports will bring this government massive revenue. So it's an area that I would be expecting a candidate to really address very seriously. Because if you see, I've mentioned 33 trillion from the Minister of Finance. I've talked about the abandoned landed properties across Nigeria by the report of the Federal Ministry of Justice. I have just referred to the Apapa ports and the potential to bring in revenue. So we are not a poor country. It is that we don't manage our resources, and therefore we look as if we don't have resources.
All right, we need to quickly bring in this question before we let you go, Dr. Agbakoba. The issue of corruption, lack of transparency, and accountability. It's been a major issue. And I want you to just perhaps talk to us on what you would expect when the next president comes in 2023. A lot of Nigerians have been speaking to the matter of addressing corruption and accountability.
Yeah, I think the starting point again would be to recall what I just said about legal failure. So if you deal with legal failure, that will help the process. Then the second thing will be to identify exactly what institution can do what. Right now, we have the EFCC as Nigeria's premier anti-corruption agency. I think the EFCC is saddled with too many responsibilities. It's investigating crime, it's prosecuting crime, and it's trying to recover assets. Three things in one. The EFCC doesn't have the capability to do all these three jobs. And I challenge anyone to tell me where in the world you have any EFCC doing three things in one. So I will recommend to any Nigerian president next year to restrict the role of the EFCC to investigation, and then to create an efficient state prosecution service outside of the Ministry of Justice. Just like you have in the UK, you have the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, if you have efficient anti-corruption agencies, then people will be afraid to be involved in corrupt practices. But right now, no one is afraid.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
We have run out of time, but we need to end the conversation here now. But we must thank you, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and former President of the Nigeria Bar Association, Dr. Ulisa Agbakoba, for your time on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.